dedicated Lila Nishmas in memory of Rocha Leah Bas of Chaim Tzvi. This year, Shnas Tavshin Samech Tes 5769, we have the unique and rare opportunity to participate in the performance of a mitzvah, the recitation of a bracha that comes about only once every 28 years. The mitzvah is sometimes called Bikat HaChama, the bracha Birkat HaChama. Many people have, certainly in the last number of weeks, as we approach the date, I've heard a little bit about it, and there's various information that's available in different sources concerning this once in every 28 year occurrence. We'd like to explore in this shiur exactly what it's about and where it comes from and why we're doing it. It's going to take place this year, Mitzvah Hashem, on Erev Pesach, corresponding to the secular calendar, the solar calendar date, April 8th, 2009. This is one of the rare occurrences that we have in terms of Jewish practice where the date of the event is a function of the solar calendar, sometimes called the secular calendar, and not the Jewish calendar. I mentioned this year Birkat HaChama is recited on Erev Pesach. I remember discussing with somebody recently, trying to remember, where was I Erev Pesach 28 years ago? So I explained to him nicely that it really doesn't matter where you were Erev Pesach 28 years ago, because 28 years ago it didn't land on Erev Pesach. It always comes on April 8th, at least in this century, and the previous century it lands on April 8th. Just so happens that this year, April 8th, happens to be Erev Pesach, but it's not a function of Erev Pesach, it's a function of April 8th, and we're trying to understand why that is. How does that come about? There's only one other prominent practice that we have that's also a function of the solar calendar, the secular calendar, as opposed to the Jewish calendar, and that is when we begin to recite the request of a saying Talo Moto Livrocha in the Shmon Esrei, in the bracha Birkas Hashanim. So many people will recall that it says in the Siddur that starting on December the 4th, we say the saying Talo Moto Livrocha instead of the saying bracha, and that's the practice that we have outside of Israel. And again, that's a function of the solar calendar. We'll try and understand a little bit about what's going on with these practices. But first, a little bit about the calendar in general, just by way of introduction. It won't be easy to go through the mathematics and the science of it, and I don't claim to have expertise in all of that, but as a general overview, it will be helpful to know the following. Many people assume that the Jewish calendar is what we call a lunar calendar, based on the moon rather than the sun. That is not entirely correct. It's not incorrect, but it's not fully correct. A lunar calendar operates as follows. A lunar calendar is based upon the rotation of the moon around the earth, which takes place in 29 and a half days. It's not exactly 29 days and 12 hours, but for our purposes, close enough. Approximately 29 and a half days is what it takes for the moon to rotate around the earth. So therefore, each new lunar month begins 29 and a half days after the previous one. Each month lasts 29 and a half days. For this reason, the Jewish calendar, every month that we have is either 29 days or 30 days. There's never any Jewish month that has 28 days, like February, and there's never any Jewish months that have 31 days, like January and December, and however that poem goes, 30 days has September, however exactly the months break out. We don't have any 31-day months in the Jewish calendar. Every Jewish month is 29 days or 30 days, because it takes the moon 29 and a half days to go around the earth, so we don't start the Rosh Chodesh. The Gemara says we don't start the new month in the middle of a day, so you finish the day. Generally it alternates, 1 month 29, 1 month 30. That's not 100% the case, but more or less that's how it works. There are numerous exceptions, and it's not even the same necessarily every year, although 10 of the 12 months are the same every year. 2 of them are variables. Perhaps in another shiur we can go into some detail regarding the setup of the months in terms of Rosh Chodesh, why sometimes we have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, sometimes 1 day Rosh Chodesh. It's a function of the same thing. If the concluding month had only 29 days, there's only 1 day of Rosh Chodesh, the first of the next month. If the concluding month had 30 days, so there are 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. First day of Rosh Chodesh is the 30th of the outgoing month. The second day of Rosh Chodesh is the first of the incoming month. But again, as I say, that's a shiur by itself. But it's important for us to recognize that the months are a function of an astronomical phenomenon, namely the rotation of the moon around the earth. The so-called lunar year is not really a function of an astronomical phenomenon. Nothing really happens differently that we perceive anyway in terms of 12 such lunar months. It may relate to the zodiac signs, which is a different discussion also, the mazalos, but for our purposes now, it's not that after a year suddenly something's different. The months are based on an astronomical scientific phenomenon, the rotation of the moon around the earth, but not the years. The years, it's a solar year is up after 12 such months. With the solar calendar, it's exactly the opposite. The solar year is a function of a scientific phenomenon, namely the time it takes for the Earth to go around the sun, which is 365 and a quarter days. A quarter meaning a quarter of a day, 6 hours, 1/4 of 24. So 365 days and 6 hours is how long it takes, again, approximately the Earth to rotate around the sun. That's the end of a solar year. The division of that year into 12 months, the 12 months also do not correspond to a particular scientific phenomenon. Okay, so the months that happen to be 12 months, no secular month, let's say now we're in March, nothing is going to be different on April 1st scientifically than it was on March 10th. The months are not a function of anything scientific in terms of the solar months. It was divided into 12. By the way, one time there were 10 months. It was a different type of a calendar. That's why you'll notice, if you're familiar with Latin roots and so on. So December, DEC, is 10, like in the word decade.